Hi, my name is Doyle Williams. I'm the pastor of Tennessee River Baptist Church here in Camden, Tennessee, and just want to see if I can abbreviate a message that I've preached for years and years and years. I've preached a message on Don't Throw That Rock, and it's based on the passage John 8, 1 through 11. I'd like to read that passage real quick if I could, please. Jesus went unto the Mount of Olives, and early in the morning he came again into the temple, and all the people came unto him, and as he sat down, and he taught them. And the scribes and the Pharisees brought unto him a woman taken in adultery. And when they had set her in the midst, they say unto him, Master, this woman was taken in adultery in the very act. Now Moses in the law commanded us that such should be stoned. But what sayest thou? This they said, tempting him, that they might have to accuse him. But Jesus stooped down and with his finger wrote on the ground, as though he heard them not. So when they continued asking him, he lifted himself up and he said unto them, He that is without sin among you, let him cast a stone at her first. And again he stooped down and wrote on the ground. And they which heard it, being convicted by their own conscience, went out one by one, beginning at the eldest even unto the last. And Jesus was left alone, and the woman standing in the midst. And when Jesus had lifted up himself and saw none but the woman, he said unto her, Woman, where are those thine accusers? Hath no man condemned thee? And she said, No man, Lord. And Jesus said unto her, Neither do I condemn thee. Go, and sin no more. Out of this passage, I want to look at three basic points. First one is finding fault with others. The second, being part of the crowd. And the third, knowing when to walk away. The first part is finding fault with others. People have a tendency to want to build themselves up by finding fault with other people. The more faults they can find with others, the better they feel about themselves. It's sad that people do that, but they do. And there's an illustration that we see in the scripture where it says, Why beholdest the mote that is in thy brother's eye, and fail to see the beam that is in your own eye? We can find fault with others, but we can't with ourselves. There was this woman that had gone to Sweden and had gone in and bought this cheese, and it had a real strong odor to it. But forgetting that she had bought it, she put it into her purse and went from shop to shop. And everywhere she went, she began to think, man, these people must never take a bath. They stink. They're putrid. This is awful. Everywhere I've gone, there's just this horrible smell. She gets home, she pulls out that cheese, I believe it was Limburger cheese, and here's this horrible smell. She realizes that the person that was stinking was her. The smeller was the feller. So here she was, blaming others, and yet she was the very one who was stinking. Now, being part of the crowd, it's often easy to hide in the crowd and then just jump in and do whatever they're doing. When I was in high school, there was a big fight that broke out my 10th grade year. I grew up in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and it was just this huge crowd of students was going to walk out, over 300 out of a 1,200 student body. So we all walked out and we were out there on the street. We were yelling and chanting and doing all this stuff. We were just having a free day. Everything was good until the paddy wagon showed up. And buddy, it was everybody and their brother cleared out and ran. And a whole lot of what we see in this particular passage is, it was easy for the crowd to gather together. You could kind of hide in the crowd. But then Jesus began to write. And as he wrote, Jesus was familiar with this area. He was familiar with a lot of these people. He very well may have written down names. He very well may have written down the sins of these people. Sins that they were guilty of. They'd failed to fully comply with the law. They were not to bring just the woman to be stoned. They were to bring the man and the woman. They only brought part of it. They were just trying to tempt Jesus so as to accuse him. It's really sad. But the other thing that he may have done is just written down the sin by itself. First time he may have written the name. The second time he may have written the actual sin. We don't know exactly what was written. Now the third part of this message, and I'm trying to abbreviate it, is to know when to walk away. There's a time when we come to a point where we need to understand that maybe we've overjudged something or we've made a mistake and we need to leave. When that paddy wagon showed up, we knew it was time to leave. When these people had their conscience pricked by the truth, they dropped their rocks and split. They headed out. And it began with the eldest. The eldest were the wisest. They were the ones that knew, hey, this man's speaking the truth. You know, he who is without sin, let him cast the first stone. How many of us are sinless? How many of us have no faults of our own? We've got to learn to know when to keep our mouths shut. It's so easy to want to condemn others, and we do it for a reason. Because we want to make ourselves look better. Because we all are sinners. We all have problems in our lives. And if we can point out the faults of somebody else, well, I'm as good as so-and-so. Can you imagine somebody wanting to be a basketball player and comparing themselves to the worst person that they've ever seen play basketball? That's not going to get them very far in life. If they want to do well, they've got to ascribe to be as good as like Michael Jordan. And if they shoot for the best but fall short, look how much further they're going to be than if they try to be like the worst and make it all the way. So we've got to learn how to strive to be like Jesus, and even if we fall short, then we're still moving in the right direction. We've got to be very careful. These people showed courage. It takes a lot of courage to admit when you're wrong. It takes a lot of courage to know when to walk away and to not be a part. When I was a kid growing up, I worked in a jewelry store in Chattanooga. It was one that was downtown, and the man lived in Alabama, but I had started asking this student who was he worked in our store, but he was a student from Tennessee Temple. And while he was there, I began to try to find out more about the owner. And he finally said, if you want to know anything else about him, you need to ask him. Well, here I was active in my church and thought I was a good Christian, but you know what? He pointed out my fault. He pointed out that I was messing up as a Christian and setting a bad example. He opened my eyes. He wrote in the sand. And after he did that, then I began to realize where I had messed up. And I tried to be careful ever since. Now, I'm not saying I've been perfect, but he opened my eyes to a mistake that I was making. So I just want to encourage us today, as we think about this message, Jesus didn't buy into what they were trying to talk him into. So many times people will come up and try to get us to listen to gossip and try to listen to what they've got going on. We need to just say, whoa, why don't we get the other person in here and we'll hear everybody's story. You'd be surprised how quick everybody will shut up and stop. Hoping everybody has a relationship with Jesus Christ. Praying that you'll let the Lord lead you and guide you in everything that you do. Thank you. Have a good day.